My name is Chef Joe DiPaolo, pastry chef for Duncan Hines, part of ConAgra Brands. I'm going to be joined here with my colleague Meg Harris. We're really excited to share with you a little different approach to what you've seen mostly in the past. So we're going to really talk, and Meg is the science guru here with her background. So we're going to really dive deep into more of the science side. So, you know, we talked about, and you've heard me say over several years, baking is an art and a science, right? And so as we were thinking about what we were going to do and show for you guys today, we thought it'd be really fun to kind of dive a little deeper and more into the science side of things. And then we're going to sample some things. So, but we're going to sample a little bit towards the end versus the beginning. So if you don't know me, I'll do a quick bio. So as the acting MC, I've been a pastry chef for over, a few years, about 23 years. And I've done almost everything in the realm of pastry except for own my own business, which I plan on never doing. But I've worked in large hotels, Ritz-Carlton corporations, Hilton corporations. I've done research and development for Mars, studying in chocolate and sugar. I was a pastry chef in Japan, so I worked internationally, doing a wholesale bread and pastry business in northern Japan. I taught pastry in Atlanta at Le Cordon Bleu for about 5.5 years, and then just recently, last role, about 9.5 years. Certified executive pastry chef, love what I do. And the one thing that I think that I've always wanted to say to you guys over the last couple of years has always been trying to better yourself and try to always learn and talk to others. You know, sometimes, and I mentioned this earlier, some of my favorite parts is talking to chefs and getting together with chefs. You know, why do you do this? Why do you do that? Working with Monica and Josh over the last couple of days has been a blast because we just try to think things differently. Why do you do that versus do that? When you watch the left hand doing something, what is the right hand doing? You know, so always try to better yourself. So that's me in a nutshell. Excited as always to be here and hopefully give a little bit of information to you to pass on and try to have you implement for the next year. I mean, that's the big focus, right? Is you might not think that what we're doing is the right thing for you, but if it makes you and challenges you to think differently, we've succeeded. All right, so that's the most important thing to do when you take away from all of the speakers over the next couple hours, is just kind of make you guys think differently, okay? Most important thing. So I'm going to let Meg introduce herself and talk about her background a little bit.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone. My name is Meg Harris. I am representing ConAgra Brands today. I've been a food scientist for the past 25 years. I've been working at large food companies, manufacturing companies. I have a bachelor's degree in food science from the Florida State University, go Seminoles. And I also have a master's degree from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And I just recently completed my culinary degree, a 2-year degree, associates in baking and pastry. I do hold a patent with, it's a ready-to-eat fudge topping. And I co-authored that when I worked for ConAgra Foods, with Kraft Foods, back several years ago, working on Jello pudding, the Jello pudding in a cup. My team is here today. We represent the frozen desserts at ConAgra Brands, the Marie Callender multi-serve pies. So you've seen them in the retail space. So props to my team over here of other scientists and chefs. Really excited to partner with Joe. We are new friends now that our companies have combined. So I'm going to hopefully not geek out too much on the science. I promise I will not teach you the empirical formula of glucose.
Unless you want to know.
Or any balancing of chemical reactions. But there are some things that you can learn, just the basics, to help you control the product in your own kitchen. So the more that knowledge that you have, you'll be able to troubleshoot to make your product and baking result perfect. So
awesome. So once again, too, please don't hesitate to ask any questions, interrupt us. That's what we're here for. You heard that before from Josh, and I know Monica especially will like that as well, and also Chloe as well later on today. But a couple items that, when we first started making pies, we traditionally worked with cornstarch as a thickener or flour as a thickener because of the starch content. But we have an array of different types of starches. We're going to pass them around to you as Meg is going into more of the scientific side and the origins of these starches. So we're going to be talking about pectin, tapioca, cornstarch, clear gel, gelatin, and what's the latest trend that people are making with pies is agar-agar, okay? So we have 3 different pies. So here's the thing about our tasting, okay? So we're going to the team over there is slicing some pies for later on. So we made 3 different pies today, a strawberry gel and a raspberry gel using the clear gel, and then also an agar-agar with a cherry pie with a streusel topping. So instead of feeding you all 3, maybe I don't know if you don't like strawberries or you don't like cherries. What we're going to do is we're just going to say, okay, who would like a cherry, portion of the cherry pie? Raise your hand, and then we're going to be starting passing them out and stuff like that, okay? It's a lot to consume, and you still have more to consume later on today. All right? Any questions so far?
No.
So what's really cool, too, is we found these. You found these, right? I believe.
Yes, I love
these little containers,
Amazon.
right? So Meg made these containers up and with these cute little stickers. But what I wanted to talk about these containers is, as you guys start practicing and getting ready for your next competition, don't make a whole big batch of what you're making with, right? Eventually, it's going to be a little costly, right? And you guys are already spending a lot throughout the year, right? Make smaller batches, maybe get smaller containers like this and make your fillings and then let them, sit and age and cool, and then you can go back to them. But it's another cute way to kind of just have containers. So we're going to start to go, and she's going to start talking about the starches, and I'm going to start to pass these around, and then we're going to go.
We do have a nice little pamphlet for you.
Just the pectin.
Yep. And in here is actually the chart, so you don't have to take notes per se, but you absolutely can. But this is a takeaway, so we wanted you to have that. A lot of these ingredients you can find in your grocery store today. So you probably used pectin, maybe for canning, and tapioca for a pudding, or even in your pie recipes. Cornstarch you're probably really familiar with. Gelatin, and some of these other ones like clear gel, we're going to talk a little bit more about. We purchased this off of King Arthur, and then agar-agar, actually Joe purchased this off of Amazon, but you're going to start to see this even in like your natural food sections of the store, so check there first because you might find it in your local grocery stores now. So we're going to talk about pectin as the first one. Just briefly, like the bird's eye view of food science is that we study the macronutrients, which are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And today we're really going to specifically look at, a lot of these are just carbohydrates, and there's at least one protein in this mix. Of carbohydrates, you have simple sugars like table sugar, and then you have all these complex carbohydrates, which are starches. And pectin is actually a complex carbohydrate. It's a fiber, and a fiber that's found in fruit. So they basically extract the pectin out of fruit. You'll look at pectin, and you do have to heat it a little bit to dissolve it. And fruits contain varying contents of pectin. So you might have to pair fruits together if you want to make a pie with pectin, and it really set very well. The next one we're going to talk about is tapioca. So Josh, maybe you'll just pass this one for me over here. We want you to look at these because they're basically, this is a controlled study that we did. They're all the same concentration, so you're going to really see the properties of each and what they look like. Some are cloudy, some are clear, some hold water, some release water really well, and some are very, very gelled, like maybe you don't want to use a lot of that ingredient in your pie, or you want to back off on that. So that one we passed around was tapioca. Tapioca comes from the cassava root, and it's actually a root that they extract a starch from. It is a starch, And it is also gluten-free. So if you're making a gluten-free pie, which is very popular today, you may want to use tapioca. I would suggest that you use flour rather than the pearls for tapioca, because the pearls do, you can sometimes taste them, like the little pearls.
Like fish eyes, they get gummy.
Yes.
They all explode and it's gross.
Exactly.
Flour instead of the pearls.
Instead of the pearls. So you can even purchase a flour this is the more pearl-like. There are some bigger ones that are tapioca pearls, but you can also get flour, and that would be even better to use in your pie if you want a very smooth filling. All right, our next one is clear gel. And clear gel is very popular. This is what more of the mass manufacturing use, because this is freeze-thaw stable. So you can make a pie and then freeze it and then thaw it, and it will still maintain that thickness to the filling itself. Clear gel is just a pre-gelatinized starch. So starches basically are really tight granules in some of these sources that I'm talking about, and you have to hydrate that starch, and then it swells, and that takes time and heat to make it swell. And then what they did here with this product is they actually pre-swelled it for you. So you can basically just mix it in and go, and your filling is set. And what is the last one? And then gelatin is from an animal source. Who knows where gelatin comes from? Horse hooves, pig skin, like all the parts of the animal. I mean, it is maybe kind of a gross production, right? But it is absolutely delicious, and it provides a very creamy texture if you use the right amount in your product. Gelatin, actually, you cannot freeze gelatin. It will get very brittle, and then it'll expel all of the water. If you ever make Jell-O out of the box, that's gelatin. And if you make it at the beginning of the week and you look at it at the end of the week, there will be a lot of water, and that's called syneresis. It's basically a protein structure that traps the water, and then it slowly starts to just squeeze on itself, and it releases the water from its trapped it's kind of like a mesh. And then the last one is agar-agar, which we're going to do a demo on agar-agar specifically. Agar-agar is, what's really cool about it is it's a seaweed extract. There are a lot of plants from the ocean that we can harvest, and it is basically the fiber of seaweed. If you've ever touched seaweed, it's kind of flexible, right? And basically they harvested the seaweed, and it's the cellular walls of that seaweed, and it's vegan. So a lot of people are looking for options of gluten-free or vegan pies, and this is an ingredient that will really help you in delivering that kind of product.
So,
Question.
just like Meg was talking about the syneresis, you can see that with the cornstarch too. I don't know, sometimes if you made pastry cream before, right? And sometimes you put it into the fridge. Another example of seeing this is you put it in the fridge, and then the next day, and all of a sudden you start to see where on the very edges of the custard, you'll see a little bit of that moisture, that water that's breaking. That's exactly what Meg was talking about. And you'll actually see that in the cornstarch. So be careful with the cornstarch one, because it's not balanced. Just like Meg was talking about, we did a specific type of ratio, just so you guys can truly understand and see what we're talking about, the different types of gelling agents that are out there. So another way you can do it with the gelatin that I do when I make mousses specifically is I don't use a powder. I don't use the gelatin leaf where you bloom the gelatin and then you squeeze out the moisture. I actually make a gelatin solution where I just take my leaves and do 6 times the amount of water for the gelatin, and then I just let it soak in, and then I just dissolve that right away, and then I have on hand a gelatin solution for mousses. And it's just easier and it saves a lot of time. I don't know if
Because
you do that
with gelatin,
either.
you have to bloom,
You have to
basically
bloom
bloom
it.
it. You basically add your water to it. This is a dried form. If you use this, it does have a smell to it. So if you have a very delicate flavor of your pie, you might not want to use the powdered version. You might want to go and get yourself the leaves like you were talking about, because this has a very clean flavor. I love these. You do have to still soak it in water, cool water. Don't soak it in hot water. It
don't
will
do
totally
that.
dissolve. I did that once in class, and that didn't work out. And you want to do it cold, and then you just squeeze out the water and add it. It's actually, I love this product, so.
And to what Meg mentioned earlier too is, typically, if you remember, sometimes like we talk about ingredients and where to get them. I always said, oh, a pastry importer is everything that we purchased for this was literally online. So I wanted to make sure that when we talked about, Meg and I were thinking about this, we want to make sure that everything that we did, it's available for you guys to get. So interesting thing with the King Arthur, I actually ordered the King Arthur, not even through King Arthur, I just ordered it on Amazon. So, but all right, so right now what we're going to do is, because the fact that we wanted to show you something a little bit different, maybe you're not used to working with it. Generally, I've worked with agar-agar for quite some time. In Japan, specifically in Asian desserts, it's called kantan. It's very traditional. It's a jelly. You can flavor this, and you just basically dice it up, and you do different types of desserts with it as a garnish. But I made this earlier today, and it's literally just 1 cup of water, and I'm going to see if I can do this right. Just press heat, and all I'm going to do is for the cherry pie that you're going to sample, and you have the formulas, by the way, on
Yeah,
the
the
back
recipes
of
are on the
the
back.
pamphlet. But I just wanted to mostly show you guys how to use it, right? So we were just talking about how with gelatin you need to bloom it, okay? Soak it so it's a soft, gelatin leaves are crisp. You soften, you bloom it so it hydrates. With instant clear gel for the gel pies, you need to add it into the sugar so it can, as well as pectin, to make sure they don't clump up, and then add them in. Well, with agar-agar, it's a little bit different. It's actually extremely, extremely easy. That it's almost, kind of, for me, easy to do here on the demo stage here. But
What's in there?
all I have here is 1 cup of water. I've turned it on to heat. So you have to have it where the liquid is hot to dissolve the agar-agar. All right, you don't want to add it into a cold solution, or it could clump up. So right here, it just, the great thing about induction burners is they heat up quite quickly. But a basic ratio, and this is how you start to develop your recipes, right? You have to start somewhere, right? No matter where you are, no matter what pie one was a starting point, right? So this year, the pie that you presented, was that the first pie that you made? No? Or what? It was that good, and it was, right?
No.
You have to make sure that's great, But you have to do trial and error and figure it out. So like every time if I'm looking at making a mousse, or if I'm looking at any other type of crunch, and you'll see that even Josh was talking about that from the components, right? You make the chantilly, and you don't taste everything together with the cake and the crunch layer as well. They got to first taste them itself, and then everything morphs, right? Well, as you start developing here, this is just going to give you a basic recipe, and you can start to create it, all right? So, for instance, here I just have and I shut this off, but it's a nice hot liquid, and I'm just going to add a ratio of 1 teaspoon of agar-agar to the warm water. And then what I'm going to do is I need to let it cook for about a minute, okay? I need to really make sure that that's dissolved. And that's how I did that with the cherry. So what I did with the cherry, I used a little bit of the water, because where did I get a lot of my liquid from? Cherry juice, right? So I've seen a lot of places where they take that and they drain that off and they discard that, right? That's flavor, right? It's flavor. You don't do that, right? And it's liquid, and it's got the same, it's basically moisture, it's water. So what I did was I just added the brown sugar and the water with the cherries. I brought that to a boil, and then as that was boiling, I just literally just tossed in my, sprinkled in the agar-agar, and then I just whisked that constantly, no lumps. I let that boil for about 1 minute, and then I poured it into a pre-baked shell. That was it. Let it cool overnight, okay? So now you know it's a little bit softer texture. Once again, you can start to manipulate exactly what is the exact type of gel that you want to have, okay? I'm gonna pass around this one now because the gel, thank you. The gel that we made for the cups was more of a, I believe it was 25%.
25%. It's pretty thick.
Where this one I have here, when I calculate it out, is like a 2%. So I made it in a small, this is 1 cup of water, right? That's another thing too, is if you start to figure out whatever pie you're making, right? And start with water, right? You don't have to start to go off and spending all that money on the different types of juices and whatever, purees. Start with water, start to understand the properties. If you're starting to change all the different types of gelling agents, hopefully we'd like to see this next year of someone using an agar-agar in a pie. But start to create the, do I have a second one here?
Yeah,
there.
you do.
So we can pass on just this one right here.
Yes.
So you want to make sure as you start to do this, you start to understand the gel. Now, you don't have to eat this, but if you want, you can, just, I'm going to pass this out, just push your finger against it, okay? It sets very quickly. So when you work with the agar-agar, it starts to set at basically just over about 120, 130. You'll start to see as slowly in the pot that it's warm. You'll start to see it start to gel, okay? That one that I'm passing, that's 1 cup of water and 1 teaspoon of that
Just
little
very
bit,
little.
right? So,
Very little.
So now when you saw the container that we made, we did 25%, right? So that is 1 teaspoon, and look how firm it is, right? And
Yeah.
that was only made this morning, I don't know, around like 7:30ish. And I just put it into the fridge to accelerate it. But when you see the pie, now it's, it still gives a little bit of texture to it. So think about now, maybe your pies, as you start to understand the strengthening powers of the different types of gels, maybe it's a blend of these gels that you like too. So the whole point of this is to kind of make you, open up your mind a little bit and say, okay, well, maybe I want a different type of gelling agent. Maybe I think this one's a little strong. Well, these two are weak, but I still kind of like the texture that it leaves in your mouth. Maybe it's about a blend of them as well. I mean, when you look at any type of item in the world that we live in, you just don't use one starch. You don't use one type of flavor. I mean, it's basically...
They deliver different textures.
Yeah, exactly.
And more complexity to your finished product. So you can use a couple. We have a question over here.
Could you use some of that agar-agar for whipping cream, stabilizing?
Great.
Yeah, you can do that. It will start to, it does get brittle. So the question was, can you use agar-agar for whipping creams and those types of products? So yes, you can, but what it will do is as you mix it and shear that product, it will get a lot more smooth. It won't hold its shape as if you just pour it and let it set. I made, if you've heard of molecular gastronomy, a lot of the chefs are using agar-agar, and they basically let it set, then they mix it, and then they just pipe that on their product, on their plate, just for like a burst of flavor and texture to their products. I once made one with champagne, and it was absolutely delicious, like just a little pop of agar-agar gel.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
We got
Better than a Jell-O shot,
Another
I guess.
question right here. Great question.
It's not just you guys promoting this. In Wisconsin, a lot of the bulk stores are Amish run.
Yes.
The Amish are promoting agar-agar. They think that's the best thing since
Yeah.
sliced bread.
Well, because it's vegan, right, too, and so you're not slaughtering an animal for that.
They gave me a free box last
Neat.
time I was in her bag to try because they thought that
Very cool.
that's the best.
So that
Cool.
means next year.
Next year, but
You just said it, so next year. But do that exercise. So, I mean, whatever thickening, you're probably using cornstarch or flour. What are you using to thicken?
Well, that was
Don't
my
do
next
all your
question to
secrets,
you
but-
eventually, what do you think of King Arthur pie enhancer?
You know, I haven't used it because I use some of these other. Yeah,
that's
I
exactly
just
what it
use
is.
what I
Yeah.
know here. Like I like to just go to the individual ingredients and control my recipes that way.
I just was curious.
Yeah.
If you had used it when you thought of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
to your point,
I don't like the taste that cornstarch gives. That's what I don't like.
Yeah, you can get that starchy.
what you can do too is but you still like the binding qualities of what it does. So to your point, then maybe it's a balance, right? Look how little you might need a little bit of agar-agar to that, where you could add that to your, have a blend of your starches. So,
And I really don't like tapioca.
and you don't like tapioca.
Yeah,
Well, I haven't tried the flour, but.
yeah,
The other thing is the sugar.
yeah.
Was there someone else that
There
had
was a
hand- I
question
saw a
over
hand
here.
over
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
I'm of the understanding that if you use, like, fruit gel, Niagara, or Ione, then, cannot take a pie with that, with it, because it will thin, is that so?
So clear gel, you can bake it, yes, and that's why it's a pre-gelatinized starch. It's basically like they did the work for you. They did the work for you with a cornstarch, but in this format. So it's faster and more efficient. And major manufacturers use this pre-gelatinized starch in a lot of products to be able to handle that kind of abuse, basically, of the product. With tapioca, yes. So tapioca, also considered arrowroot cassava flour, that will thin. Like once you get to a certain temperature and you stir it, you will break that gel. So you're absolutely right with that one. And what was the last one? Oh, agar-agar. The question was, does it thin after you heat it?
No.
If you let it gel and then you stir it, it will thin. It will not be as hard set. But you can bake with it.
And I've worked where
Yeah.
it reheats. Like you can, through the agar-agar that I've done here, you can reheat it and it sets it back up again.
It's already
Yeah, right.
sort of
Isn't it?
starting to set in the bottom
Yeah.
of the pan as it's cooling.
So, but that's still a hot pan. And I wanted to leave this here, but to the point, I mean, it will start to set when the liquid is still warm to your touch. That's what's cool about this. So as you think about as you're developing your recipes, just keep that in mind, is at what time and temperature state do these gelling agents work? Is there a question over here? I saw a hand.
Yeah.
No?
We have a question
Oh, yeah.
here.
So I have the agar-agar flakes,
Yeah.
but you use more of those than the powder. Do you know the amount? Like if I don't have powder, but I have flakes?
Yeah,
I'm trying to
I
think.
haven't worked with flakes, but I think it's,
It's pretty similar. You
similar.
probably have to use a little bit more of the flakes, only because they're not broken down.
Yeah.
So,
and I know that if you, from a if you already are using gelatin and that's something you're familiar with, like, I mean, we have the Knox gelatin right here. You can literally substitute a 1-to-1 I found with the Knox gelatin.
agar-agar to
To
gelatin?
the gelatin,
Okay.
yeah. Agar-agar to gelatin is a 1-to-1, where the flakes, and there's actually, you can get it in a bar format as well. It's different to like what Meg's point is. It's just 1 teaspoon of flakes is not 1 teaspoon of powder, right?
It just
So-
takes a little more time to hydrate that. The smaller let's not be too technical, but the smaller the particle size, like the easier it is for water to get in there and hydrate this. And that's why I recommended, a tapioca flour rather than a tapioca pearl, because it's the same sort of thing. The smaller you grind it, the easier it is for water to go into whatever it is and swell it or start the gelling and the trapping of the water in the gel.
And also,
Good
whatever
question,
you're
thanks.
deciding to gel, think about it. So if you have any high acidic fruits, like a pineapple, specifically with agar-agar as well as with gelatin, you just can't add let's just say it's puree, okay, like a pineapple puree. You just can't add the gelatin to that because what will happen is the enzymes, the acidity will start to break down. You won't get the same gelling effect that you're looking for. You actually have to heat the acidic fruits and boil them for like 1 to 2 minutes to make sure that the enzymes are broken down enough so then you can have the right gelling powers.
The big ones are pineapple, papaya, kiwi. Like, don't try to use gelatin with those and you haven't heat treated those, because they have those, they're called proteases. They basically break down protein, which is what gelatin is.
What? You got it? Oh. And don't forget my dear friend passion fruit.
There was another question here.
I'm just talking about the tapioca. You have to understand, it does thin the filling, but the properties of it, as the pie cools, that's when the thickening develops. So if you could get a correct ratio, whether it's from a recipe or whatever, it works wonderful.
Yes, it does. You just have to be careful with your temperature. There's that point where if you're used to using it, but if you go over, it's not very forgiving. But good point. We have a question in the back, Joe.
Yeah.
I missed what you said about what fruits don't go in the Knox gelatin. I know you said pineapple and passion fruit.
Any acidic fruit, yeah.
Yeah. Kiwi is the other one, and papaya. Like, those are typically the ones that people put into, a gelatin dessert, and then it liquefies, and you're like, what the heck happened? It was because there's those enzymes in there. But you can use like canned pineapple in Jell-O, right? That works. But if you use fresh pineapple, there's nothing that has deactivated those enzymes.
What about oranges? I don't know if you put oranges in it.
Those don't have that enzyme in them. They're just doesn't naturally occur in oranges. So you're going to be okay with that.
That might be more acid.
Yeah. Oh, good question.
No, great question.
You're thinking along the right lines. You got to problem solve. You got to think about it maybe before you make it sometimes. Troubleshoot.
All right. Any questions?
Any
Great questions, guys. The whole
Yeah.
point of this, once again, is to kind of open your mind a little bit to trying to think about something differently. Go home, grab all of these items, start messing around with them. Doing like the exercise that I did right here of just doing a cup of water with a teaspoon. Start at the teaspoon, then you start to figure out exactly, and then all of a sudden, as you're starting to morph what is the right texture you're looking for, then you can start building on other ingredients into it, and all of a sudden, you're now developing a recipe from scratch. Okay, eventually, when you first started baking, right, you always followed a recipe, right? Well, as you started making these now, I mean, in the almost 7 years that I've been a part of this family here, I've seen you guys doing multiple pies, different pies every year, but you started one pie, right? And you've now developed, and you look back at these recipes, or sometimes I don't really call them recipes. They're formulas, right? They're formulations of goodness, right? But just keep that in mind as you start to develop these new formulas for next year. Maybe doing a blend, maybe doing one starch. And have fun with it. That's the most important thing, is to have fun.
Are we going to have them taste
Yeah, I
pies
want
over
you to
here
taste
while
pies.
we let
Yeah.
Monica
so
come and
Monica's
set
gonna
up?
So.
Okay.
So they're in the back. I'm just going to kind of de-mic, and I'm going to be in the back there. Let's just kind of come up, because it's going to give also Chef Monica a little time to set up her next. It gives you a little bit of a snack break. But keep in mind, ask questions. You might taste it. There's different textures there. You're going to start to see that in the strawberry gel. It's a softer texture versus the raspberry gel. And this is just about the different amount of moisture from a raspberry to the moisture that's in a strawberry. There's more water in a strawberry versus water that's in a raspberry. So that's understanding exactly what you're doing. So
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank you, everybody.
it.